Some University of Wyoming faculty members want more input into decisions made by UW administrators, particularly in regard to budget cuts and academic program reviews. To that end, they've reformed a Wyoming chapter of the American Association of University Professors, which had been on hiatus since the 1970s. New Chapter President Renee Laegreid shares the organization's concerns and goals with Wyoming Signatures, Orlando Jacinto.
Professor Laegreid, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for inviting me today.
What is the AAUP?
AAUP is the American Association of University Professors. It's an organization that was started in 1916, and it serves to promote academic freedom and shared governance on university campuses.
Why is there a need for the AAUP here at the University of Wyoming?
Well, as an organic institution, Faculty Senate takes very measured steps. They work with the administration, and sometimes there's a need for an outside or an independent organization to either add information, and we're very good at finding information, to check on best practices. So if, for example, the Professor of Practice bill that came up recently was put forward to the Faculty Senate, there was a lot of concern around the university as to, is this a good thing for our institution at this time? And so we were able to go to the AAUP and look up what were best practices and make some suggestions as to how this would work better than just the way that the bill was structured when it came down.
Can you explain the bill?
The bill was to institute a new level of faculty position. It's called the Professor of Practice. So we already have on the books visiting professor and clinical professor, and so this was a new designation. Visiting professors, it's a long-standing institution where someone comes in for a year, could be renewed. Clinical professors work with health sciences, so they're basically working out in the field and then come in and instruct students. Professor of Practice is something that's really uniquely geared toward, for example, engineering or some of the other sciences, and this is where they bring in very high level, very skilled people from outside of academia that would teach. But the questions arose as to who's paying the salaries, how are these people being selected, what are their qualifications, and how long will they be there, and is this a way to kind of get around hiring full-time academic professors. And so we went to AAUP and found their guidelines, and found that they recommended, well, they did not approve of this Professor of Practice. They recognized that it was in place and it really wasn't going to go away, and so they gave some guidelines. And one of the guidelines was to hire a Professor of Practice for 5 years instead of a 1-year term. Acknowledge that they have an important role in an institution, especially in like an engineering department, and that for the students as well as for other faculty members, a 5-year term would be good. More than 5 years, then make them full-time faculty. And the other thing that came up through discussions with the dean of the engineering college and with the law college is that they're quite happy to look for outside funding for these positions. And that was a big concern amongst University of Wyoming faculty. Will these positions be funded by state monies, or are these high-paid positions going to be funded through outside monies? And both of the deans said yes, it would not. They would be very happy to look for outside funding.
Okay. What kind of social responsibility does the only university in the state of Wyoming have, and is it being reflected in the budget cuts?
Oh, that's a good one. If you look at our mission, if you look at the mission of our land-grant institution, as it was originally set up, our goal should be to provide our students with a very broad education that not only allows them, but actually encourages them to think critically, to think creatively, and to be prepared for the marketplace as it changes. So if programs such as the ethnic studies programs are cut, that is an enormous loss to our students who will most likely be going outside of Wyoming and interacting with very diverse people in the workplace. If the history programs or English programs are cut or reduced, that denies students the background knowledge that they have of their own country, of the historical experience in order to place themselves into a historical context. And with literature, they learn more than just about books. They learn about empathy. And in all of these liberal arts courses that they should be taking more of, I would say, they're learning critical thinking skills, writing skills. They're learning to be intellectually flexible and open-minded. And all of these things are very, very useful and important for our students entering the workplace.
Currently, programs are under review at the university. Do you feel that the university or does the AAUP feel that there is a fair review that's going on?
No. Let's put it quite bluntly, no. The program review guidelines that came down were not clear. They weren't well thought out. It was kind of interesting for me to see that they kept referring to the Board of Regents, which we don't have. So it was taken from South Dakota and not really tailored well for the University of Wyoming. And so for departments to have to go through a review process that don't really get to the heart of some of the issues here on campus seems to be a waste of time. The other thing that is troubling, for example, up at Northwestern College, there was a review process for a course on journalism. The journalism department sponsors the student newspaper, and because the newspaper is often very critical of the administration there, the journalism department got put under review, and it's likely to be eliminated. And when asked, shouldn't the category of relevance, cultural relevance, and some other criteria be taken into consideration when reviewing disposing of the journalism department? The president of Northwest College said, no, those guidelines are rather vague, and so we don't think we need to take them into consideration. So there needs to be much more specific guidelines about these programs. But again, going back to the issue of cultural relevance and diversity, because this program is small doesn't mean that it doesn't have enormous implications and benefits across the entire campus. There's an idea that maybe students having to be forced to take one course in a diverse topic is pointless. But if you talk to people in the ethnic studies programs, in history courses and literature courses, you'll find that there have been so many instances of students who are completely clueless take a course in Native American history, African American history, gender and women's studies, and say, oh my God, I never really knew this. It's opened my eyes. So yes, one course can have an enormous impact on a student's life.
And why is shared governance important?
Shared governance is important because it encourages faculty and administration to work together to solve difficult problems. So when we've got budget cuts coming up, rather than having the administration say, this is how we're going to do it, it's much better, and I think the results are much more palatable to everyone, if you have faculty involved in these cuts to understand the administration's perspective and have the administration understand the ramifications of their cuts into specific departments.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.